The question, why do people rebel, is an important one. To discover the answer, we researched 5 topics about rebels and rebellions from the American Revolution.
Nathaniel Bacon was a famous figure in the 13 colonies and is known for his revolt called Bacon's Rebellion. Bacon came to America as an indentured servant, trying to escape a life of poverty in England. After he served a 9-year term as an indentured servant, he was set free. The situation that greatly angered him was that the mayor wasn't taking the citizens' requests. When the area he lived in was constantly being attacked by Native Americans, he brought it to the mayor's attention. But the mayor did not do anything about it because the government had a good trading relationship with the Native Americans and did not want to jeopardize that. Nathaniel requested that they fix the issue multiple times, but they did nothing about it. Bacon could have just left the issue alone. However, he decided to gather up many of his followers and revolt. It was quite traumatic what he did to the colony of Jamestown. He burnt down the buildings all over Jamestown, including the City Hall and the House of Burgesses. He decided to go against the government to fight for what he believed, that what the mayor and the other representatives were doing, or rather not doing, wasn't right. Many people who have studied this in history believe that he took things too far, burning down the city and that it was unnecessary. The Bacon's Rebellion was definitely an example or act of rebellion that left a mark on Jamestown for years to come.
The Stamp Act was a law created by the mother country that forced all American colonists to pay a tax on every piece of printed paper they used by buying a seal or a stamp to put on it. However, this is just another method of taxation, since the colonists had to first pay for the stamp. The colonists had previously been easily smuggling goods into the country, but the Stamp Act stopped that. In some cases, such as tea, the taxes went down, but were very strongly enforced. The law was enacted in 1765 as a way to force the colonists to pay for the cost of the French and Indian Wars. This was the first direct English tax on American colonists. England decided to do this in the colonies without the approval of the colonial legislators, and when the colonists found out, they rebelled with force and determination to end the heavy taxes brought on by the Stamp Act. In order to do so, the colonists attempted to not buy the stamps and carried out many other protests. The beginning of the Stamp Act Congress was a group of people who were gathering protests against the English. After many months of protesting, the British Parliament decided to repeal the Stamp Act in March 1766. After ending the Stamp Act, the English passed the Declaration Act, which meant that in all cases, regardless of the circumstances, they had complete power over the colonies. So when the colonies were all closing over the Stamp Act being repealed, they were bombarded by the Declaration Act.
The Boston Tea Party was an act of rebellion that occurred in 1773, organized by the Sons of Liberty. The Sons of Liberty was an organization created by Samuel Adams in 1765 as a way to create bad publicity for the Stamp Act. The important members of this organization during this time were Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Paul Revere. The Boston Tea Party was a result of the Tea Act, which were rules passed by Parliament in 1773, mainly so the East India Company would not go bankrupt. The Tea Act stated that the East India Company would be in charge of all tea brought to the colonies, and they didn't have to pay taxes on tea either. This allowed the East India Company to sell tea cheaper than any of the competing tea companies. Even though this meant that the prices of tea were cheaper than before, it still made the people of the colonies very upset. People like the Sons of Liberty decided that something needed to be done. In some cities like New York and Philadelphia, tea orders were canceled. The people of the main shipping cities like Boston were fed up with this. On December 16, 1773, over a total of 180 men went on the 3 boats that arrived from China that day. The boats were Dartmouth, the Illinois, and the Beaver, all filled carrying chests of tea. These 180 men were rare for one reason and one reason only: to dump the tea from the shipment overboard. They succeeded and dumped a total of 342 chests of tea into the water. This was worth a total of $18,000. As a result of this act of defiance, Parliament passed a number of punishments called the Intolerable Acts. It shut down Boston's sea trade route, which moved them closer to war.
Benjamin Franklin is a very well-known man in our history. He is known as a writer, inventor, and scientist, and also appears on the $100 bill. Benjamin Franklin was a very well-educated man who had many strong opinions. He formed his own ideas and started to question people's thoughts on certain things. An example of this was in 1766. Franklin testified against the British Parliament about the Stamp Act in 1765. Franklin did not like this. He publicly shared his thoughts and spoke against it. Franklin sailed to France to gain their support on American independence because the French really liked him, convinced them to have an alliance with the 13 colonies in 1778. The French really helped the Americans in the war. If we did not have a person like Benjamin Franklin, the American Revolution would have not had the same result. If he had not spoken out, the sandbags and the British control might have lasted longer than it did. Franklin played a pivotal role in the American Revolution. As he was the ambassador of the 13 colonies, he also was the face of what they demanded. He spoke for what was right and what was wrong. He made sure to speak his mind, even if it was not in common belief. Franklin is a very important rebel in history, and his point of view affects all Americans today. The Battle of Lexington and Concord occurred on April 19, 1775. It is considered a rebellion because it led to the outbreak of the American Revolution. Commander-in-Chief and military governor Thomas Gage was ordered by William Legg, Secretary of State, to take all of the weapons away from the colonial rebels and to imprison the leaders of the rebellion. There was talk about there being hidden weapons in Concord. The few weapons found in Concord were the ones that interested Gage. On the other side of the battle, the rebels fired a shot at the British men and they fell. This is referred to as a shot heard around the world because it was very unexpected. It is contemplated as being the first active military engagement of the American Revolution. John Hancock, Samuel Adams, and Paul Revere led the Americans. Although not all of them made it to Concord, they still very much so influenced the Americans' actions. General Gage led the British. Over 100 Americans died, and over 300 British died. On April 19th, the battle was declared over. I think this battle was bound to happen at some point, but it lasted for much shorter than I would have thought it would. This battle fought between England and the 13 colonies is a very important event in our history.
People rebel for many reasons: power, justice, control. However, not all rebels and rebellions are good. The dictionary definition of a rebel is a person who rises in opposition or armed resistance against an established government or ruler, a person who resists authority, control, or convention. Based on this, Osama bin Laden is a rebel, but he didn't help society in any way. He wanted power and control, but his idea was justice was warped. Jesus of Nazareth was a rebel too, and he was killed for it. Martin Luther King Jr. was a good rebel, and he was killed too. Even our president, Barack Obama, is a rebel, the first African-American president. Nathaniel Bacon, Benjamin Franklin, the Stamp Act, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the Boston Tea Party are all examples of rebels and rebellion. But were they good or bad? The points of view vary widely on this. The Boston Tea Party is good, unless you are from the India Tea Company or suffered greatly from the intolerable acts. To the English, the Stamp Act probably sounded like a good idea, even if it caused a colonial rebellion. Bacon thought he was a fighter for humanity, but the mayor definitely did not think so after he burned Jamestown. So, after research and reading, we've come to the conclusion that rebellion is brought upon an opposing force when the rebel wants change that they think is good for themselves and those like them, usually despite the consequences the opposing side suffers.